You already have.
Good afternoon. We'll call to order the Tree Advisory Commission meeting on Thursday, September 5th, 2024. And we'll begin with roll call. So welcome and for our guests and everyone.
Joe Stadheim, City Engineer.
Leaking
Greg Dearson, Commissioner.
Paul Lakeland, Commissioner.
Joey Shugel, Park and Recreation Director.
Jeff Huffman, Public Works Superintendent.
Danita Trivish, Park and Rec Administrative Assistant.
We've got one guest, Jordy Veit, will be up at the mic in a little bit, hopefully. I seek approval of the agenda for our September 5th meeting.
I move that it be approved.
I'll second.
Motion and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Then seeking approval of minutes from the May 2nd, 2024 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
And I'll second it.
Motion and a second to approve those minutes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say same, but motion passes. So we'll get into our old business. Item number 5, city reimbursement programs and budget update. Joe?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair and Commission members. In short, we've used up all the funds that were budgeted for 2024 as part of the reimbursement program and whatnot. So our leftover monies is none. All the funds are used. Yeah, the bulk of that went to EAB reimbursement for removals. So that's kind of where we're at with the funds at this moment.
We have a sort of a clerical question on that. Where do those requests just stay in the queue until?
No, so anything that comes, or if people are calling, we just let them know we don't have any funds available, but the funds for 2025 have to occur in 25. So any removals that happen now, we just, funds will be unavailable for those removals now, so.
Yep. Is that, so when people call and ask about removing, you give that advice and say, maybe wait until?
If you can wait, yeah, if you are wanting to apply for the reimbursement, otherwise, a lot of people are just doing it regardless, so. Yeah, if we were to allow reimbursements in the past calendar year, I think our funds would be gone the first week in January, so that's.
Yep. Any questions? Uh, 5.2 is the PUC update, but Derek Nelson's not here. So 5.3, Park and Rec Department update, Joey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. To stick on the EAB topic for a little bit, our staff internally has removed a number of trees, 23 additional EAB trees in throughout different parks throughout our system. These are some of the smaller infected trees that were already showing signs of that the infestation has been progressing in those. So we removed 23 of those. We are planting 43 new trees throughout our park system yet this fall in anticipation, well, twofold, in to replace some of the removals already, but also in anticipation of future removals, so picking those locations. So the locations that at the moment that we have chose for those 43 trees, Highland Park's gonna get 5, North Park is gonna get 4, Lincoln Park 8, Washington Park 10. If you've been around Washington Park, there's gonna be some significant removals in the future with EAB there. Nels Park 10, we've already replaced over 20 trees in that park as well, and there's a number to go. And then South Park will also be getting 6. So that's kind of those 43 will be kind of diversified throughout the system.
That's something that the city's looked at for your budget now in 2025.
Yes, our normal tree replacement, I guess, over the last few years has been about $5,000, and, you know, between $5,000 and $8,000 of what we look to for tree replacements. We're recommending, and in the preliminary budget at the moment is $30,000 for replacement. So, we know that won't, be enough to do all in 1 year to replace what we're gonna lose, but, looking at more of a 3 to 5 year plan there.
Any other questions for Joey? Thank you. And I think you'll have more on the work session update, but we'll get to that one. 5.4 is Public Works update. Jeff?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. As of now, we've cut 75 stumps out already for the EAB trees, and we're gonna start our fall stump cutting up in the next couple of weeks. We're gonna start up cutting them again. So that'll be starting up, and we got a long list of trees, of stumps to do, so we'll be busy with that. Cemetery's still working on removing some more trees up there that are EABs, and that's about all I got. Otherwise, I just wanted to commend my guys too on last week's storm. We had quite a few trees went down, and they took quick action and got the streets cleaned up and trees removed, so I want to commend them on that too, so.
Yeah, that was, there were quite a few, a bur oak or two here and there that, quite a bit of damage. So, thank you, Jeff. 5.5 is Private Tree Services. Tony's not here today. And then 5.6, EAB update. Joe, did you have anything more?
Mr. Chair, Commission members, nothing new at this time, but we are awaiting DNR grant release applications and things of that nature, but nothing to date.
Did they cycle through another round?
Yep. So, yeah, we unfortunately weren't recipient this last go-around, so we will certainly try again with this next round anticipated over the fall, winter, when they release that grant opportunity. So.
Any rumblings or information from them that they might increase the amounts?
We haven't heard anything yet,
Okay.
so to be determined on that, so
Okay.
more to come.
Then 5.7, Buckthorn update. Jordy Veitz here. Tell us about the U of Minnesota.
All right, yes, Jordy Veit. Give me 1 second here. I just have my regular fall update for you. And just as a reminder, we did collect data a little differently this year. So that's where you kind of see some information for every month. But there isn't anything too exciting, so I guess I'll just jump in. This year we did observations starting in May, and we were keeping track of the flowers that were blooming in each of the 6 different plots throughout the summer, and then also estimating about how much space that they were taking up. May, it was just garlic mustard, probably not a big surprise with that. It was just in 3 of the plots 1, 2, and 5. If you are curious, this was at the start of the year, what some of the plots looked like. So there's not a whole lot of growth in them yet compared to the end of the year. I think the rain this year really helped the various plants grow in there because it's really hard to get in there and see much of anything now. June, Dame's Rocket. So the first 2 of the year was invasives. That had been found in all of the plots. That was very dense. It was actually probably more dense than the garlic mustard was. So I put in a couple pictures. This is in the plot here. So back here is where the plots are. And then if you did not get the chance to see it or were curious, this is a couple pictures of it all the way down that section of the bike trail. And I think I got one more in there. So there was quite a bit of that just in that whole area this year. July, there was actually no flowering plants, so we had no observations to submit. August, we got the white snake root. That was found in almost all the plots except for plot number 5. And we had one of these, the annual Fulbane, and plot number 4, so a little bit more variety. And for comparison, this is the amount of vegetative growth there is in there later in the year with it. That was another one from August. And then September, which I just completed here. Observations were actually at the end of August, but they were for September. Again, it's just the white snake root in there. Quite a bit more than there was in August, so that was still in full bloom. Couple of other things as far as if you're wondering about the buckthorn, because the buckthorn that we had in the test plots is still there. It is kind of hard to find at this point. So I did put some examples in there. None of it has grown very big. It's mostly smaller plants at this point. And this year, towards the end, it has definitely gotten shaded out. You have to move a lot of vegetation to dig down there and find them out. So this was in plot 1, which we had the native seed mix in. You can just see some of the buckthorn plants that are there. Plot 2, you can see there is some buckthorn in here as well. This was one of the plots that was just left as is. There was no native seed mix put down there. A couple more examples. Yeah, plot number 3. Again, this is just kind of example. You can kind of see the flags are hard to see with all the vegetation, but that's the outline of our plots in there. So you can kind of get an example of that. Plot number 4. Again, there was some buckthorn found in there as well. Plot number 5, there was very little. There was a couple really small buckthorn in that plot. Again, this is one of the plots that was seeded with it. And plot number 6 is the last example I have, and there was some little bit taller buckthorn in this one, this plot in general has not had as much vegetative cover for some reason as the other ones. So with that is actually the end of their data collection for this project. I have not heard anything yet, but I'm assuming at some point it will be site cleanup either later this fall or next spring. That might probably be more dependent on what the weather does the rest of this year, if that happens this fall or not. But getting the buckthorn out, the flags, all that stuff cleaned up out of there. Is any questions or?
Are you happy with what's happening?
It's been interesting to see. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen some more of the native stuff come up, but it's been a few of the years we had really dry weather in there. And then I've had a couple trees, not overly big trees, but trees not necessarily in those plots, but around there that have kind of come down or branches have broken off just with age and that stuff. So it's kind of changed the dynamics of it with the lighting and that stuff. They're still working on the data, but looking at the sites across the state, it is very clear that if they find the right seed mix, it is kind of dampening the buckthorn from coming in. But it also has been kind of very clear that you take the buckthorn out, and if you don't have something that you can get in there soon enough, the garlic, mustard, the Dame's rocket will kind of come through as well. So I think it's going to come down to it does work, but to what extent is going to depend on the dynamics of the site, especially the amount of sunlight and what kind of other plants you can put in there. Because if you can put plants in there that will germinate and grow faster than what the buckthorn does, it doesn't seem to completely stop the buckthorn, but it's slowing the growth down, which over time could possibly, prevent it, keep it smaller plants or stop growth, that type of thing. So, but I'm sure they'll release more information once they get all their data.
Was the snake root in the seed mix, or was that
No.
Can you tell us about that?
Nope,
That-
snake root was not in the mix. It's just been, I found some over the last few years, some plants, but nothing like this year. But even though it is kind of the native, it is fairly aggressive in spreading. So that's probably why it just hit that point where it had the space and the time to really grow a lot more this year. So, but it is not, at least at this time, is not on any of the state's invasive species list or nothing. So,
Any other questions? Otherwise, thank you, Jordy. Thank you.
welcome. Thank you.
From Buckthorn to the Big Tree Contest, 5.8. There were 10 entries, and the winner is Pat Donahue. Tree measuring 167.2 inches. Press release will be sent, and then letters sent to all participants or people who had trees that were measured. So we did that last Tuesday. Tom assisted. Actually, I assisted, we should say. Paul and Tom measured, and I watched. So I wrote things
You
down.
helped.
Yes.
A lot.
But I was, we had a couple on, most were in private yards, but one was in the Brown County Fairgrounds that somebody had noted, and one in a park here and there.
And I believe the winning tree was a hybrid elm that was, I had talked with a lady years before, and she'd moved it in from the farm where she grew up when she moved to New Ulm and had it planted in her, when she was young, in the yard.
Okay.
So it was a hybrid elm that was a volunteer. So it's not a known variety that's propagated in nursery. It's just growing in her yard.
And we tried, with most of the ones that we measured, we tried to identify, and most of them were hybridized.
There were a couple American elms, and there was one that was pretty big that was dying, that was in the process of dying. I'm not sure if it was a hybrid or not, but anyway. Dutch elm disease is still taking out elm trees, so.
It still is? Really?
I think there's a few in Flandreau that are, their bark is just flaking off in that classic way.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So there's not as many elms to die. That's the reason you don't see it as much, but,
And we chose that because that's when the Dutch elm disease went through, and people largely replanted green ashes, so now we're seeing the ash, so we're trying to plant more than one species. That's the
yeah.
recommendation.
I go on walk, try about 3 times a week. Anyway, I go about 2 miles, and I noticed there was, on that one route I had, which is not necessarily representative, but there was like 26 stumps I spotted against the parking, and there were about 27 standing ash trees that hadn't been taken down, but will be. We're right in the thick of it right now, I believe. There's a lot of ash dying, and a lot have come down already. So,
Jeff probably sees those stumps. That's what he sees when he drives. He's probably those stumps.
you probably see stumps everywhere you go, is what I suspect.
And from one end of town to the other, we're really seeing that. Now that it's in the cemetery, that was kind of the north holdout, I think. So every park. To that end, or related to that, we had discussed the Broadway that came up, the ash trees on Broadway. Can you speak to that for us, Joy?
Mr. Stadheim would have a,
Mr. Chair and commission members, so city has been in communications with the State Department of Transportation concerning Broadway. The trees along Broadway are state's responsibility, being a state highway. The state has sent foresters through town a couple times to do an assessment. The last time they were through town, it sounded like they were planning to at least take care of the median trees sometime this fall. The hope is they could get a crew from the metro area to come down and take care of everything, but depends on funds and resources. But their goal, at least short-term goal, is to at least get the medians taken care of, and then as time permits to get the remaining boulevard trees. But it's on their list, but them too, like everyone else, are dealing with it all over the state, so. The local district just doesn't have the staff or personnel to take care of it, so they're relying on the metro crews, and they're busy. So it's either that or they need to allocate funds for a tree company to come in and take care of it, so.
And those stumps are theirs too.
Yeah, they would, clear and grub everything, so.
Do they have any guidelines or information on whether they would replant or an intention to replant on
At-
those medians?
Yeah, at this time, they're not going to be replanting anything, but there's always time for future discussions on that and, as time permits. But as of right now, they'll come in and take everything, but they won't be replanting following the removals at this time.
And those medians are the cities then to mow and to
Yeah,
maintain?
we're responsible for all maintenance, yep.
Any other questions around that? Otherwise, we'll jump to that new business item. 6.1, the city council budget work session update. Joey?
thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. So on August 20th, the City Council did hold a work session, and there were a couple items on the session, but one of the items was related to EAB and the 2025 budget. And really that was, that session or that item was on the agenda to get City Council's outlook on what they'd like to see for EAB in the near future. You know, we know we've been very successful with the first two rounds of grant funding. We were the first community in the state for that funding. We know it's all around the state now, so it's even more competitive. So we will continue to apply, but potentially, you know, with the competition, there's only so much that resources out there. So the discussion did start with $100,000 in the 2025 budget for the reimbursement program. Now, the details weren't discussed on how that would shake out. That would be something, if that stays in the 2025 budget, that would come to this commission on how that would look, whether it be up to a certain dollar amount reimbursable, which would be more substantial than our current reimbursement program. That discussion, and thank you for attending. We did have a couple commissioners there. So Greg, I don't know if you wanted to talk about what you heard throughout that discussion.
There was the recognition, I would say, of the depth and the severity of the ash borer across city, public and private. So, but maybe the 100,000 in 2025 might be too late. We've got quite a list of people that have either had their trees gone for 3 or 4 years. Mine have been long gone, and people that have tackled them this year that would have liked to seen that earlier action. So it would also probably more important to plant it into future trees. So maybe that's the angle that we take, is to try to reforest as much as we can.
Right. Yes. So as a advisory commission, you know, as that item comes through, there will be an opportunity for this commission to discuss what that looks like. Really, that could come as soon as our next meeting in November.
And then Chair, Tom Romaine and I discussed the push or the request. Is there a city forester in the plans or in the works again for the city? Or are they, how do you manage this? Because we're in the depth of it right now. So is that on the city's plans?
There have been really no discussions on that. You know, the process right now is it's kind of a group effort between departments. Engineering's very much involved, Park and Rec with the park system and the street department. So resources from all three of those departments coming together for our urban forest and treatment and inventory and everything that goes into it.
And that's an added, I mean, that has been an added layer for all those departments. So the other item that we discussed that following that was, and it came up for the council, is if somebody's got a diseased tree in their yard, what's the timeline for it? And ultimately, when is it a suggestion? When is it an incentive? And then who has to direct that removal? So I think that's something we need to stay in front of too.
Right. And Mr. Stadheim's office does a lot of that. They just, unless invited on private property, they're not, they have some.
Yeah, we haven't been granted that permissions yet to be entering private property and telling people you need to take your private tree down. Boulevard trees are a different issue. So we have staff in the office that kind of on a case-by-case complaint basis will go out and inspect the tree, and if it's deemed hazardous, then notification letters get sent out to the property owners and things of that nature. But as far as private trees, as of right now, it's a private property, private issue, until we're directed otherwise and granted that authority by council. It will remain that as for the time being.
But the ashes that exist are none of them are probably going to escape. So eventually that's going to be something to look out for.
Unless somebody's treating them. You're probably right.
One way or another, somebody's got to do something with them. So, okay. That budget process is November, right?
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the final budget will not be approved in November. However, a recommendation may be coming to this commission in November. That's our last meeting of the year. So I would anticipate us having at least a framework of potentially what that could look like. And then ultimately, City Council gets to decide on if that's going to go through or not.
And just the number of trees that were in that list, upwards of 160, do we have a number on how many have actually been taken out? Do we tally them in any way other than voluntarily reporting it?
We have the reimbursement list, but the ones that don't come to our office for a reimbursement, we have no way to track those. So, and the ones in the boulevard generally will have a permit or something to track, but private yards we don't necessarily have that ability to track that for what's been taken out.
We did have an estimate of the number of ash trees in town, public and private, and we're certainly not seeing all of the numbers of those trees come through.
No, not
Because
yet.
So many people are just taking care of it, taking it out without the reimbursement.
Right.
And I think the discussion at that work session also was this isn't a one-time, 1 year process. This is going to take a number of years to get through. We're seeing a peak, but I think we're years out of being done with this issue.
Especially the replanting side. I think that's
Right.
going to take a while. Yeah. Any other questions about that work session? There were certainly Again, we certainly acknowledged and they realized how many trees, especially parks, had lost and boulevards had lost because it's noticeable. Any other new business? All right, thank you for your reports and time today. Our date of our next meeting, November 7th, here, City Council Chambers at 4 p.m. Please email any agenda items a week early. With no further business, we are adjourned.